tonight, Boris Johnson has been photographed channeling his hero Winston Churchill by indulging in a spot of painting on his Spanish holiday.
But as the energy crisis continues and concerns grow that supply chain problems could threaten Christmas, the Prime Minister is being criticised for taking time out at such a difficult time for the country. We're joined now by the Conservative Party Chairman, Oliver Dowden. Very good morning to you.
Morning.
Mr Dowden.
Hi,
we
good
have
morning.
an HGV driver crisis. We still have, in some parts of the southeast, a fuel crisis. We have an energy bills crisis. We have rubbish piling up in the streets in Brighton and threats that that could happen elsewhere in the country if the bin drivers aren't available. We now have a shipping crisis, ships unable to dock and unload goods for Christmas. And meanwhile, we seem to have the Prime Minister abroad saying, crisis, what crisis?
Well, first of all, I'd just like to reassure your viewers on behalf of the government. I completely understand their concerns at seeing some of these headlines, particularly in relation to the challenges at Felixstowe. It is worth noting that officials at Felixstowe have said this morning that the situation is improving. But it does demonstrate that the government has to get on with the job in addressing this, and that's exactly what we're doing. The major issue there is in relation to HGV drivers. That's a problem not just unique to the UK. We see it in Europe, Poland, for example, US and even China. That's why we're investing in more training for HGV drivers, 50,000 extra places, so we get more drivers available to do that. So the government is addressing these challenges.
Yeah, there are 5,000 visas, as we understood, that were going to be issued for HGV drivers to alleviate the emergency in the short term. Only 27 had been taken up. I mean, that is a ridiculous number of visas, isn't it, if you need 5,000? I mean, we need about 100,000, don't we?
Well, it's important to appreciate that that is just one plank of our policy. So, for example, we're investing £17 million in retraining boot camps for people to become HGV drivers. We're creating 50,000 more training places. But in the short run, we have committed to these 5,000 visas in the run-up to Christmas. Now,
it's only one plank of the approach. It's one plank that's not working.
If I may, Susanna, on that point, we'll update the figures shortly, which I'm sure will show an improvement. It is worth noting on that 300 people have applied so far. We'd expect that number to rise. 127 visas have actually been granted so far, and 27 of those relate to fuel tank drivers. So the number is a little higher than that. As I say, I expect it to rise, and it is just one part of the overall strategy, because the key thing for dealing with this is we've got to end this reliance on constantly, whenever there's a problem, pulling a lever to have migration from outside the UK. We need to train our own people. We need to improve wages, and that is the central part of the government's approach. But in the short term, clearly, as we run up to Christmas, we've said we'll grant some visas to help through that position.
Okay, well, let's talk about the short term. Why can't we rehire recently retired HGV drivers? I mean, they are gagging to come back to work and help out. They've still got their licences. They're fully trained in driving tankers and goods vehicles and all the rest of it. They're offering their services, and they're saying that no one's picking up the phone. Why don't we re-employ, even if it's only for 3 to 6 months, recently retired HGV drivers? They want to come back to work and help.
I completely agree, and that's the sort of thing we should be doing, and that is precisely why we're investing in the reskilling, the boot camps, to make sure their skills are up to date, and that's why if their licence has lapsed, we've increased the testing capacity by 50,000. That is the way we solve this in both the short run and the long run, getting those people back.
Just finishing on the pictures of Mr Johnson, I mean, nobody would argue that the guy deserves a holiday. We all deserve a holiday, particularly after heavy years of the kind he's had. But it isn't a good look, is it? I mean, I'm not asking you to say that he should come back, but it's bad optics, isn't it? It's bad PR.
Well, I've worked closely with 3 Prime Ministers, and I can assure you that there's no such thing as a holiday for a Prime Minister. I know the Prime Minister will be and is working out there and is engaged with issues going on in the UK. But also, I hope your viewers will appreciate that the Prime Minister has been through a challenging time many times. Not only to get COVID, he's got a new child on the way, and very sadly, he lost his mother just a few weeks ago. So this is a short break, and he will be returning to the UK, and I'm expecting to see him later this week.
Speaking of returning to work, when are the civil servants going to get back to their desks? I mean, here in the private sector and the commercial sector, most people are now going back to work in quite high numbers, but the civil service still seems to think that they can work from home. And we've got issues like, for example, this is just one example, the DVLA. People can't get licences renewed for up to 2 to 3 months because there's such a backlog, because these guys and women are working from home. Why don't you tell them to get back to the desk like the rest of the world?
Well, I have kind of said that, and I was criticised a bit for it. I should say, first of all, I'd like to pay tribute to the many outstanding civil servants, many of whom I worked with in my previous ministerial role and do so now. But I've lost count of the number of small businesses that have come up to me and said, look, we need government to be leading by example, at least having people coming back to the office for some of the time. And I think that's good for people's mental health, is obviously good for things like city centre economies. And we're moving to increase the numbers. I think that's exactly what we need to do. And that's why I said the comments about people getting off their pelotons.
I know, you were criticised for assuming that your civil servants at home were all on their Peloton bikes and rather enjoying their time off at home rather than working hard. I mean, it's a difficult message for people to hear. On the one hand, it's OK for the Prime Minister to have a holiday and work from abroad. On the other, if you're a civil servant, you shouldn't be working at home. It's not a consistent message, is it?
Well, I would say it's entirely consistent on the basis that I have had countless meetings with the Prime Minister in his office in Downing Street, in the Cabinet room. The Prime Minister has been at his desk, as your viewers would expect, throughout this entire crisis without lapse. This is a separate issue about taking a short holiday. I'm not for a moment saying that people should not be taking short holidays. And by the way, I'm not for a moment saying that people have to be chained to their desks 24/7. What I'm saying is I think it's good for civil servants to be in the office. Of course, they can work flexibly. I'm not criticising the incredible contribution. I saw this in my time in DCMS, how hard they worked during unprecedented times. But now is the time to get back into the office. And I think that's the direction we're going in.
Please keep on cracking the whip, because they do need to get back to their desks. And I think that's a common view in the country.
But I would also say if people are working hard at home and able to do the job, it's a slightly sneering attitude, Oliver Dowden, when you said, they're all on their Peloton bikes. I mean, apart from anything else, keeping fit and healthy is not a bad idea, is it? I wonder if I can ask you about what happened at Wembley last night.
Because just on that point, Susanna, yeah. I don't want to interrupt your discussions over in the studio, but I'm not in any way sneering at civil servants. I know they work very hard. I'm not saying that people shouldn't exercise and so on and so forth. What I'm saying is I think it is healthy for them. It's healthy for the economy for people to be in work some of the time, as happens elsewhere.
Yes, it was hyperbole, wasn't it?
I want to talk about what happened at Wembley last night, because, of course, you used to be the Secretary of State for Sport. What should we do when there is the sort of fan violence that we saw amongst Hungary fans last night?
Well, these are deeply disturbing images, and I know that the FA will be investigating this fully and engaging with FIFA as well. There's clearly still, and I heard some of what John Barnes said, there's still clearly an underlying problem with racism in football. That's why, as Secretary of State, and I know that my successor, Nadine Dorries, will be taking this forward, we're addressing online abuse with our bill that will introduce fines up to 10% of global revenue for tech firms if they don't address online social media racist abuse.
And this wasn't online, of course. This was Hungary.
We've made
Hungary
an awful
fans
lot of
booing, the taking of the knee, and there was racial abuse of a steward. I mean, should specific action be taken when it comes to Hungary?
Yes, if there have been failings here, they action need to be taken, and I know that the FA are looking into this, and I'm sure FIFA will look into it as well. You're absolutely right. It's not just online. We have made a lot of progress on the terraces, and if anyone remembers how bad things were, say, 30 or 40 years ago, we have made a lot of progress, but there's still more to do. Did
you take some heart from last night? We were discussing this at the head of the show this morning, that it would appear that when the England team took the knee, the England fans applauded. They didn't boo. The only booing came from the Hungary fans, and the only racial taunts and abuse came from the Hungary fans. Last night, the English fans did not display any signs of racism at all. Would you tentatively say that would imply that we were making some progress, at least here at home?
Yes, I would think so. I've spoken to many, in particular, black football players who've suffered this abuse, and I completely appreciate why they're taking the knee. They want to take a stand against this racism. And I think the overwhelming majority of England fans share their absolute repugnance at this racist abuse. I mean, my son's sort of taking an interest in football now. It's hateful to think that racism should be part of this. This should be a joyous thing that we share as a nation.
Just to establish, because of course your colleague, the Home Secretary Priti Patel, before the Euros, had said that she didn't support people participating in that type of gesture politics when it came to taking the knee. And lots of people saw that as, you know, sort of allowing people to boo that as gesture politics. Just establish that you completely disagree that it's gesture politics, that it's an important thing that the players feel they need to do.
Well, Susanna, I've said all along. I'm happy to say again. I've met with many football players, and I completely appreciate why they're doing this to show they're taking a stand against it. I, as a government minister, and I know the Home Secretary is doing this as well as a minister. We are fortunate. We have been empowered by your viewers to have the power to actually take action to address this as a government. So my primary focus is making sure that we deliver on those pledges. That's why, for example, we are bringing forward this legislation to address racist abuse online. That is where the government's focus is. That's why the Home Secretary has talked about banning orders and so on. Our job as ministers is to deliver in the actual government policy in addressing this.
And it was certainly good to see the police getting stuck in on the stands last night and making arrests. They didn't hold back, which was good to see. Very, very briefly, because we're way over time, there seems to be at last a breakthrough with the Northern Ireland issues with Brussels. Big stories in the papers today saying that the Commission have said that they will drop 50% of customs checks on goods. The figure could be even higher for products like meat and plants going into Northern Ireland from the UK. And an EU diplomat has said that the number of checks is going to drop massively, and it's the best way to sort this out. Do you think that's the olive branch we've been looking for? Very briefly, do you think we've reached some kind of agreement here?
Well, I've seen the briefing as you have. The government hasn't actually received the EU's response yet, but we have said that we will engage very constructively with it, and we expect to receive it later today, and we'll go through it in detail. It is important that we get some fundamental changes to the Northern Ireland Protocol because it is not working, particularly for the majority community in Northern Ireland.
This does look like a breakthrough moment, doesn't it?
I welcome signs of progress, but there are wider issues that we have to address. For example, the role of the CGEU, which is the European Court, and the jurisdiction it has. It's rather anomalous that that treaty is subject to the jurisdiction of the courts of one country. We've said we need to address that. So we look forward to engaging with the EU on their proposals, but we need to have a proper discussion about it. This can't be a take it or leave it.
All right, well, good luck with that.